Hey everyone, it's me, Patchdown Bogat. Um, in these occult lesson series, it's so advantageous to really think deeply about what's being said in these videos because today's topic is really about how do you, that's you, the individual, or myself, approach a daemon. How do you approach them? Just by me mentioning the word daemon, Daemon, right, is a lot more different than saying the word demon. It's all about perception. You see, in my perceptive mind, when I think about the question of today's video, the lesson itself, um, when I look at the word demon, it's really nothing wrong with it by saying it, but I get a negative vibe from it deep within me, and it makes me feel this uneasy when I say the word demon. Even when I say it now, saying it twice, it doesn't really stick to me. And I guess because of the appreciation that I have, for the demonic, and looking at what they do and what they have done for me, especially Satan, it's just one of those things where I came to realize I prefer the word daemon because how I perceive it is that I have so much gratitude, so much, I just find them to be so beautiful that being a fact that with the knowledge that I've learned about them, right, and knowing what um, demon means, just a degraded word terminology of the word daemon. Someone who's a spirit guide, a teacher. I mean, that within itself will change everything on how you perceive matters in your life. I mean, think about it for a second. It's like how you view me right now. If you want to be stuck on how I look image wise, or, you know, little things like that, or how I process things, it could stop you altogether and you could not pay attention to the information they're in, right? It's just that simple. So it really comes down to how is it that we're able to perceive that particular daemon. You see, I remember when I was first calling. Let me see. I'm not too sure what I did first at that particular time, but it's neither here nor there. But I know the very end of whatever it was that I was doing. I went online and I wanted to learn more about Clorneck. And I went to this forum, and this person, it never, escaped my notice that when he explained who Clorneck was in his reality, he spoke of Clorneck of being this huge monster that when he conjured him up in his hotel room, at least the individual was able to say, like, you know what, it's my fault because it was my viewpoint of the Goetia, and then he ended up just from that point on, he just ended up changing his viewpoint of the Goetia altogether because he said what he saw terrified him, even though the information that was coming out of Clorneck's mouth was so rich and so informative. How the loving kindness that Clorneck showed that individual didn't escape my notice neither, because based off of what he has typed down in that forum, he said Clorneck even informed him why he's so afraid and went as far as correcting him on how he should pronounce his name and all this other stuff. It was like Clorneck knew, if you get my training of thought here, he knew human understanding, their limitations, and why a person would do the things they do. You know, so he learned from that, and so did I. As I was looking at that particular article, and I thought that was very interesting because a lot of what the daemons do is based off of your perception. I kind of hinted at that at my other video, whereas to someone, Satan could be a starfish, a seahorse, or whatever. If that daemon chooses to take these, those forms just to educate you, then it's just how it is. I mean, To me, I know when Satan came to me as a red colored dragon with many heads, not only did I know the gnosis of why, that image came up because of my Christian background back in the day, but I know it was figurative in every sense of the way. And by that, I done some research on my own and I was able to educate myself. But that was still Satan's way of communicating with me because of how I perceived them. And it was just one of those very beautiful experiences that I'm just so happy to share with you guys, because knowing that experience was really good. And he tends to keep that for him, because even on maybe two other occasions, when outside of lucid dreaming, he actually appeared in physical form, in a translucent form, because you could still see something translucent, because I didn't say invisible, I said translucent, and you could see the outline, the form. Perhaps at that time it was more likely because, how I'm looking at it now, maybe he didn't want to scare me fully, I, or not at all. But the idea is when I saw him manifest, I wasn't afraid. It was just something that he knows, like, that's how I perceive him, and there's benefits with that. One thing that I also like to add as I'm bringing out all this information, friends, is that you need to keep in mind too is it's not just your perception, but the energy. You know what I mean? It's the energy, because that's why two individuals could bump heads, because of the energy. As they say, you're just two peas in a pod or whatever have you. That's why when you go to any channel on Twitch or here on YouTube, or you read a book, everyone has their own unique experience with that particular daemon. Like, for example, if I just go back to the example of the individual that I spoke about at the forum, you know, with that experience, he saw him as a hideous monster. Even though, again, he was smart enough not to do that again and to pay attention to the information, not so much on image, but the information. But with my experience, it's the same thing, except for um, I think around the time that I was experiencing and experimenting with daemons, my judo Christian viewpoint of daemons just went out the window altogether. So, in other words, I remember there was one experience where Buer, he shapeshifted in my room, and we know the image that he has in the old grimoires, where he's seen as a man's head, and he has his, like, these legs and arms just in counterclockwise, moving and moving, and that's what he chose to basically communicate with me. And then at the same time, I remember getting to know him and having familiarity with him. He transformed to that um, unto something a lot more kinder, like a human individual, perhaps with this hair tied back. And it's neither here nor there, but it still serves as a lesson, doesn't it? It's how you begin to perceive them. And yet another example, like Beelzebub. I tend to see him as a 12 or 13-year-old boy, Caucasian male with dirty blonde hair. And then he slowly transitioned into, well, it's not so much image wise, it's more like vocal. Because now, instead of him sounding like a kid who was filled with so much knowledge, he sounded like a full grown man, but with a raspy voice. And then of course how he would to communicate with me would be by flies themselves, at the most awkward and strange times. But that's how I perceive them, and it's one of those things that you need to keep in mind, because when I look at Klonek and I think about that example, like I said, because I'm still building up on it, it's all about perception here, friends. It's all about perception. Because when I think about that example, to be quite honest, Klonek comes to me something very similar to and forgive me if I mispronounce the name here, the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. Because I'm an artist, I love to draw. I tend to draw him as such, but it's more like he looks like an oversized hamster that looks just cartoonish. But that's my point. How I see the Goetia is a lot more different than how you view it, because in my perception, they're just lovable. They're just individuals that I could get along with. And I kid you not, I did a mass ritual of, invocation of all of the Goetia, which took hours. I'm talking about shaking knees and had to relight the candle. And the very next day, every single one of them had to, communicate with me in their own way. You know, Satan had to basically tell me, pick up your phone, write down each and every name, and every name that I've have written down. It just it was just phenomenal. If ever you were to come in contact with a demonic divine such as Satan, and you have that experience that is just so, it just deceives, not even deceives. It's more like it. That's not the word I was trying to find here. What the word I was trying to say is the word defy. It defies reality, not deceives it. It defies reality. You cannot make up that shit. I'm sorry, you cannot make up that shit because some said their names out loud, some said it internally, some said it through synchronicities, some said it in an ancient, let's say, image, like, let's say, the painting of Lilith, the traditional classical painting of Lilith. She's a naked woman with a serpent around her body. That's how I knew it was Lilith without her saying it was her name. And the list goes on. In other words, they have chosen so many various ways in order for me to know this is who they are. And it was just amazing how the Revi ending of it all, I was able to be 100% accurate with every single one of them that I had invoked. And it was just a very amazing experience, and no one could really take that from me. In fact, when there's times when I'm having problems in the occult, because I'm very pragmatic, I could be very skeptical, because just because I do something, I'm going to question it if it's in my own head or not. I'm not going to just believe for the sake of believing. That's a Christian notion. Even when I was a Christian in church, I hated, I detested the very idea that these elderly women would go, well, thank God, or God did it. Then I'm like, how do you know God did it? And how do you know it wasn't based off of your good efforts, based off of just you alone? And why does it have to be God all the time? You know what I mean? But that's my approach to everything. It's very pragmatic. It's so, with that said and done, when we think about how we able to approach a daemon, it is based off of perception. We have to understand what that is first, though I have explained it, but it's really up to you, the individual, that once you basically have gotten rid of the preconceived idea of them, you're going to benefit. You're going to see that there's much more to that particular daemon that meets the eye. And hopefully it's not horrifying, but if you're into it, then you know what, then it works out for your favor. But get to know them first like you would to anyone else, so that you could better receive the image of the demonic. Thank you. See you guys.